Hi, this is Paula Chilchick from Anecdote Sydney office, and have another instalment on the article that I wrote, Stop Presenting Your Strategy and Start Communicating It. Now, last time we touched on how much effort is put in by executives into developing a strategy, and comparatively, how little effort is put into communicating the strategy. And that's really a travesty because you need to understand it. Everyone in the organization can only act on it if they understand what the strategy is actually about. But one thing I'd like to make clear is that it's not just about the amount of resources and effort that you put into communicating the strategy. So you might have a nice deck, you might have a road show, a glitzy town hall or conference and messaging toolkit, but it's still possible for the strategy to fall flat and for people not to connect with it if there's a missing ingredient. And that critical ingredient, of course, is a good strategy story. Strategy story that can be told by people in the organization and that really connects with people. Now, why it's important that the strategy story is retold reminds me of, well, I learned this lesson in 2017 when I was working for an East Coast healthcare company as a consultant, and they had a strategy story that they wanted to communicate. So we thought it's really important to get in a top New York copywriter who can write beautiful prose and just make this strategy story really sing, and that will help them communicate. So the copywriter put together an amazing metaphor of the healthcare company as a feisty boxer fighting off disease, and it was really well written. Went into the office of the chief marketing officer very confidently and presented it to her, and she sat back and said, you know, this is great writing, but it's going straight on my shelf because no one's going to be able to replicate these words, and I don't need something else on my shelf. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board. And that was a big learning curve for myself to realize that a strategy story needs to be retellable and something that can be shared throughout the organization. And then if we define what we mean by a story and what we mean by a blueprint of a story that can then be adapted as needed, we're really talking about two components. The first component is that a strategy story must take the audience on some form of a journey from one state to another. It might be the changing of a role from what the organization used to do to what it's doing in the future, or it might be a new value proposition that you're focusing on or something that you're really trying to deliver, but there has to be a sense of movement, not just assertions. And then the other part is that there needs that element of human connection, and that's where really detailed human-centered stories that complement the journey can help bring out and make it tangible, bring out the underlying message of the story, but in a very relatable way. So just remember talking here about having a strategy story, not just communication efforts, a real strategy story that at one level has the journey, the narrative framework, and then that's supported underneath by really detailed and engaging human anecdotes.